So good morning, and my name is Stephanie Dennler, and I work at NICC, and thank you for attending. This is our first panel, virtual, and our first virtual event for our Career Learning Link program for our high school students. So thank you guys for being our guinea pigs. We really appreciate that. Hopefully next year we'll be back to face-to-face and we don't have to do this, and we can have some face-to-face tours. If you have any questions, please place them in the chat box, or you can unmute yourself as well, because this is a small gathering here. I'm now going to turn it over to Jessica Reis. She is the Cesco Center Director, and she's going to start the panel.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome panelists. And again, I'm going to echo Stephanie's comments about thanking you for taking the time out of your day to talk to us and the students on this call. As Steph outlined, we have a class from Turkey Valley joining us this morning, and then the recorded panel discussion will be provided to Howard Wynn, to New Hampton students, as well as some NICC students here at the Cesco Center that are taking some welding and CNC classes. So as Stephanie said, it's not going to make national news, definitely, but we're going to impact a lot of students with this. So again, thank you for the time. So I'd like to start out with some introductions. So the way we're going to do this, panelists, just to minimize the feedback and make sure that you know when you're supposed to talk and not jump over everybody, I'll call on you to make it easier. And so we're going to start with introductions. What I'd like you to share with the group is your name, the company you work for, how long you've been at the company, and what your role is. And then if you want to explain a little bit about what your company does, that would be awesome as well. We don't need necessarily the whole from soup to nuts what your company does, but basically what you're known for. So Dave, would you mind starting this? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'll be the guinea pig, I suppose. But my name is David Hoehne, owner and president of Knights Construction Company, Inc. We have been a company since 2016, and we're carpenters. We build custom homes. I suppose I don't know what else to go further than that, because the carpet's so broad. So
that's great. You guys have been probably had a really busy spring and summer, it seems, not only just custom homes, but there's a lot of renovation going on. So I'm sure that your teams have been really busy and probably will be for the foreseeable future.
Yep.
All right. Jason, you're next on my screen. Would you tell us a little bit about yourself, the company you work for, and your role there?
I'm Jason Carolan. I'm a production supervisor at Featherlite Trailers. I've worked here for 22 years, and we build trailers, all kinds of trailers.
Yes, you build trailers for livestock. You build custom trailers for, I think, NASCAR and various, I'm going to say horse type things. So like you said, all sorts of different trailers, correct?
Perfect.
All right. Staci, you're next on my screen. Would you tell us a little bit about yourself and the company you work for?
Hi, I'm Staci Nicoli, and I work for Donaldson's here in Cesco, which is an air filtration plant. I worked there for 30 years. I've recently become a supervisor, so always something new and challenging, even after 30 years. We make air filters for many different things. One interesting thing that we make that a lot of people don't know is we make the M1 Army tank filters, and Donaldson's in Cesco is the only one that supplies that to the Army tanks.
Wow, that's cool. I didn't know that. You learn something new every day. Awesome. And Ron, will you round out our panelist introductions for me?
Sure. My name is Ron Bonig. I work at Croell, Inc. in New Hampton, major concrete paving supplier. I'm the lead welder here in the corporate shop. And basically anything that's ruined that these guys can manage to ruin, we manage to fix it.
Yes, that's a good skill, and I would probably tell you that there's probably going to be a lot of job security in fixing ruined things. We'll stick with you, Ron, for just a second. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. Ron also teaches for NICC, so he's one of our welding instructors for our night welding class that we have here in Cesco. Ron, will you talk a little bit about what interested you in welding and that career path?
Actually, I love fixing things, building things with my hands, seeing your progress after a day's work is is great. And it's not like a computer job where you don't see any progress after, you know, a day or so. You see immediate results. I've been welding since, God, I was pretty young. Decided to go to college for it. Got a degree in welding from Iowa Central Community College, and moved to this area of Northeast Iowa probably 10, 11 years ago, and been here doing this stuff ever since.
Great. Is welding something where you think it stays the same every day, or it's changed over the time that you've been in the industry?
Well, that's a great thing about welding. Good question too, is that it does change from day to day. What you're working on can vary greatly. Materials, processes, and you as a welder have to be able to adapt and be able to set up and run all of these different processes. Say MIG for mild steel, maybe MIG for aluminum. Two completely different processes that as a welder, it's your job to know how to set that up and perform that task.
Sure. Jason, I'm going to go over transition to you. I believe at Featherlite there would be a little bit of welding, and I also think there would probably be some electrical type things. You want to tell us a little bit about what interested you in working at Featherlite and the career that you've chosen?
What interested me, I guess, is just diversity of, we never do the same thing day in and day out. One day you could be wiring something, the next day you could be welding something. It just depends on your format for the day that you have planned. Yeah, I guess it's just.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about your career path there at Featherlite? You said, I think 20 some years.
Yeah, 22 years I've been here. I went to the military after high school is where I learned my skill. I am the electrical supervisor here in the interior building. So basically what I do is everything electrical, from lights, outlets, power converters, generators, and that type of thing.
Mm-hmm. I would venture to guess it probably varies widely as well, depending on the trailer that you're building and what it's for, correct?
Correct. We do a lot of single phase, 3-phase, AC and DC. So you're getting a little mix of everything there. You're not concentrated on the same thing daily. So my techs are well adapted to all types of electrical installations.
So like what Ron said, both from a welding perspective as well as an electrical side of things, what you do depends on the process, the process you use depends on how you're going to have that end result, and it will change. So as you said, you're not doing the same thing day in, day
Correct.
out every day, correct?
Yep. It changes on a daily basis.
Right. So not only are you working with your hands, but you also, there's a fair amount of mental knowledge and analysis that has to go into play. Is that fair?
Correct. Yep.
I'm seeing heads nod. Awesome. All right. Thank you. Staci, will you tell me a little bit about what interested you? 30 years is a long time to do anything. I feel like there would be an appropriate marriage joke right here, but we'll stick to Donaldson's. That's a long time. So what interested you in a career there?
You know, when I first started, it was just mostly the benefits, to be honest. But it's always learning and changing, and it fascinates me because I want the best no matter what I'm making. So the idea of learning just about filters doesn't probably seem that interesting, but when you see what they all go into, it keeps your interest.
Sure. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? So maybe this is a given, and maybe I don't know if you can talk about this or not, but what does the air filter specifically do for that Army tank? Do you know much about the functionality that it would provide to that machine?
It, you know, they're in the desert a lot. Like when I started, it was Desert Storm, and they dropped them from airplanes. So it helps the sand and all the dirt from getting in and making that vehicle. So if they're not made properly, that vehicle will not, that M1 tank will not function properly. So.
Right. So that air filter made in Cresco, Iowa could seem pretty inconsequential to your everyday, oh, big deal, it's just an air filter. But as you said, there's a specific consequence that lives could be at stake depending on if it works or not. So quality and getting it right matters.
Yes, exactly.
For sure. All right, Dave, your turn. Tell me a little bit about what interested you in a career in construction, and would you talk about maybe your jump from interested in that to owning your own business?
I guess who else gets to build their own jungle gyms and get to climb around? It's kind of my deal. So, I mean, I didn't go to school for this. I went to school to play football at Wartburg College. So then making that transition, I had a job out of Waverly, building, working for a carpenter there, and we got to learn the process. And there's nothing more gratifying than handing over the keys to someone to their new home, and they just love every aspect of it when they're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it's part of that process. Guess why I fell more in love with it, going from working for someone else and then owning my own, is just building a team. I've got 2 employees right now working on a job site, and I have every confidence in the world that they can do a great job, and I can sit at home and have a Zoom meeting with you guys and try and catch up on paperwork that's buried right here, right now. So, yeah, I guess that's a part of the reason why.
That's great. So there's a couple different things that you talked about there in working with people. I want to touch on the customer side first, and then we're going to go to your team members who work for you. Tell me a little bit about the difference in skill sets, or maybe the skills that you would need. Obviously, there's one with construction and putting stuff together. You mentioned building your own jungle gym and putting stuff together. So there's a very technical, hard skill there. But then there's something often in the working world we refer to as soft skills in the customer aspect. Can you talk a little bit about some of those skills that are required of yourself to work with the customers?
A lot of communication. Communication is key. Asking the customer what do they want to see on the outside of their house, what do they want to see as their windows, how big a square footage, even from the process of designing the house plan. I mean, how big a rooms do you want? How big windows you want? How many doors you want? Communication is key there, from a customer standpoint, and also kind of just feeling them out too. What do they like? What do they not like? Some customers don't want to see siding at all, and they want to see something different. So, yeah.
Definitely. And then in your team members, what kind of skills do you expect them to have? What do you look for in a good team member? Somebody who works for you.
Coachability. With my football background, I want, anybody, not necessarily athletes, but it's easy for me to go back to an athlete. Can I yell at you and you still want to do the job? Can I ask of you to do something that you're uncomfortable with and still do the job? Can I ask you to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning and be at my job sites at 7:30, ready to rock and roll? Can I ask you that? So it's more about coachability. I would say asking, your employees to do more than they're asked to in a typical job.
Sure. Good. Thank you. Staci, you mentioned that you recently transitioned to being a supervisor. I'm curious, can you talk about what the difference is in being someone who has a production role on a factory floor versus someone who is a production supervisor and running a team?
Well, I've only been on doing it for 2 months, and it doesn't seem like a big jump because I was a lead person before that. So I kind of helped with the team, but yeah, it is different because now I'm trying to manage what they're doing. And I've always had an interest in what went on, but now I've got to find a way to make everybody have that interest. Because sometimes, that happens. You don't necessarily work like you should because you've lost interest. Because a lot of people have been out here for years and years and years. I'm not the only one. So it's just keeping everybody motivated and finding the interest to say, let's get this done and let's get it done right. And so that's probably the biggest thing, is just helping with the motivation to keep things running smoothly.
Sure. So I think there's a little bit of a parallel with what Dave said with coachability and what you said with motivation, right? So there's two pieces of that motivation part. Are you going to do a good job? Are you willing to do it? How do I make sure that you're still invested in this end result and that finished product that you talked about? But then, as Dave mentioned, having the opportunity and the communication skills to be able to have those kind of conversations. So even though, I guess for the students who are listening, even though that Dave and Staci approached it a little bit a different way, those skill sets are applicable to two very different industries and different roles. Jason, I want to talk a little bit about the same. What skills do you look for in team members, and maybe talk a little bit technical from an electrical standpoint, but also if you want to venture into the soft skill realm, that's what you're welcome to do so as well.
I look for employees that are dependable and trustworthy, because a lot of our installs, I don't have time to go and check every single outlet that somebody put in or every single light. I mean, I need to feel comfortable that that employee can do that job or do that task that I told him to do and do it accurately and safely. You know, if we do something unsafe, we could cause a fire, or, you know, there could be other problems. I like to have the employees respect. I have a lot of respect for my employees, and I expect the same from them. And certain amount of gratitude, a thank you, or, you know, will go a long ways too in gaining that respect.
Definitely, thank you. And Ron, what about you? Is there anything from a team member standpoint that you would look for at Croell that hasn't been mentioned yet?
Not necessarily here at Croell. We're a two-man shop in here, and we don't deal too much with public or having new employees come in on a regular basis. I will say though that as an NICC instructor, teaching soft skills is one of my biggest things that I do. I'm taking kids or adults, if you know they take the business community solutions end, and looking to put them actually into the workforce. And they don't have, a lot of them I noticed don't have a lot of these soft skills developed. Anymore, there's a lot of, seems like this is the me generation. Everybody is concerned with themselves and themselves only, and it's a challenge.
You mentioned earlier that you went to college for welding. What education, Ron, is required to be a welder?
To be an entry-level welder, there's really no education required. Especially around here in Northeast Iowa, there's a lot of different manufacturing plants that will train you. Obviously, the money doesn't start as good as somebody who does have education background and has taken courses, but really that's the only difference.
So if you start off, you're going to make less. If you go in and you learn the specific skill, you're likely going to start at a higher pay grade. In addition, that education piece, whether it's a short-term thing like what you teach, which is I think a 4-month course, or if you go and get a full-blown 2-year degree, in addition to your technical skills like welding or like an electrical piece or like a computer numeric control type of a environment, all of those you also get soft skills like communication, accountability, dependability, some of those things that all these folks who have helped hire different people at different times have mentioned. Is that fair, everyone? Yeah,
Yep.
Seeing a lot of heads nod. All right. Jason, what education is required to work on your team at Featherlite? Oh, let me unmute you, sir. I think I can. There we go, I think.
Back.
There you go.
We hire a variety of skill level. I have anywhere from wiring personnel entry with basically no education at all to people that have had 2-year degrees. So I have a place for, entry and so forth. Obviously, the more experience you got or the more schooling you got, you're going to get a little higher up the pay scale.
Yeah, so there is a correlation between education and pay.
Correct. Yep.
At both of your companies, Ron and Jason, is a high school diploma required to work at your facility?
No,
I don't believe Croell has a requirement.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Staci, what about you? What kind of education is required to work at Donaldson's on your team?
Just a high school diploma. So you learn everything here mostly. Maintenance, they hire outside for electrician stuff. They do some electric, but unless you want to be an engineer or something, of course we hire those, and you would need obviously a lot of education, but
Right,
just
sure.
to come to the factory and work, just a high school.
Yeah, that's one thing that we should mention a little bit. So you're representing the Donaldson's facility in Cesco. Donaldson's is a manufacturer that has locations, I think, across the Midwest, and there'd be different opportunities. So if someone was interested in becoming an engineer and earning a bachelor's degree, there would be career opportunities, maybe not here in Northeast Iowa, or maybe in Northeast Iowa, but with Donaldson's. And I know Featherlite has engineers as well. And Dave, I'm guessing that you have a combination. Maybe you work with an architect once in a while, maybe other options. So could you talk a little bit about the education required to work at your company?
Zero. We've had high school students even just help us out during the summer months. As to engineers, we sub out design plans, an architect and our truss manufacturer. They're the engineers on it.
Yep. So when Dave mentioned sub out, maybe folks on the call are familiar with this, but what he means is he hires another company to do that specific function for the business. So whether manufacturing trusses, whether it's the house plans, you're working with an architect, so on and so forth, those folks do that as part of the home building process for him. So Paul, if you guys are still there with us, I'm going to remind you to stick any questions that you guys have in the chat and we can address those. And we're coming up on our time. So I have one more question for all of our panelists, and then we'll wrap up. I'm going to go in the order that we went to start. So Dave, I'll start with you. What is the most fun part of your job?
Building our jungle gyms. I mean, we've had some pretty big ones. We've had some small ones. A lot of other carpenters actually call us to help them. So we've been on additions, $500,000 houses, $200,000 houses. Just the relationships you build too. We poke back and forth with electrician, plumbers. I mean, if you wanted to count that as NICC construction, because we're the general, knowing a little bit of everything, so everything goes smoothly. I mean, our company is Northeast Iowa then. All the electricians and plumbers and whoever we work with. So most gratifying thing is just working with everybody else that likes to get their hands dirty and let's roll.
Sure. It sounds like your team has a lot of fun. That's cool. Staci, what's your favorite part or the most fun part of your job?
I would have to say just my coworkers working together, trying to do the best we can. And as anybody knows, Donaldson works a lot. We're working 7 days a week. So just being with the people and working as a team.
Definitely. The people you work with often make it fun, and that helps a lot of times with that motivation you were talking about earlier. Jason, what about you? What's the most fun part of your job?
The most fun I've ever had here is probably meeting NASCAR drivers.
Would be pretty sweet.
Yeah. But all in all, it's probably to see the look of satisfaction on people's face when they complete a difficult project, and then have the customer come pick up the trailer and just be extremely ecstatic and happy about it. It gives you a sense of satisfaction and just put something on you that doesn't let go. So,
Great. Definitely. Thank you. Ron, what's the most favorite part or fun part of your job?
I guess I don't know about funnest, but my favorite part of the job is when we get something complete and ship it out the door to the paint department. Like I said, we get the most mangled equipment that you can imagine. These conveyors have been hit by wheel loaders. A lot of stuff, the wind tips them over, a lot of stuff happens to them. And when we can take something that's just unrecognizably mangled, cut it apart, rebuild it to better than factory specs, and send it on its way, that makes me feel really good.
Sure, sure. So one thing I think is interesting, and I want to point out, you guys all talked about some sort of personal satisfaction from your teams or from seeing a team member do something or something you guys get to do. But all of your jobs are relatively technical. So there's a specific skill that you have to do with your hands. And I think that's an interesting thing because it's not just about that technical skill, it's what that skill leads to. And I think that's oftentimes not necessarily what folks always think about. So thank you again very much for your time today, for talking with us. I think the students got a lot of this. Steph, do we have any other questions from anyone?
No, I was gonna just do one shout out or one more shout out to Paul's class to ask if they had any follow-up questions. I know he had put in the chat that he was having a little bit of issue with some of their internet stability. So hopefully they got to hear the whole thing. If not, this is recorded so they can follow up with questions afterwards. But I'm gonna give Paul one more second here. Paul, any questions on your end?
No, not at this time.
Perfect. Well, thank you. Thank you, panelists. We really appreciate your time. I will have everyone log off, but Paul, if your class could stay on with Holly, that would be great. Again, thank you. And if the students have any follow-up questions and they bring them to us, we will make sure that we get them out to you panelists.
Yep. Thanks.